Overwhelming evidence has linked most chronic diseases to unhealthy lifestyle. Yet paradoxically, the lifestyle changes recommended by today's leading medical organizations as the first line of therapy for patients with chronic disease are dramatically underutilized. Why? Simply stated, most patients don't clearly understand the value of lifestyle changes. They don't know how they work, they don't know why they work, they don't know how profoundly effective therapeutic lifestyle changes can be. And often they don't know that you, as their trusted healthcare expert, are there to provide reliable, step-by-step professional guidance in lifestyle therapy. So the purpose of this presentation is to help you let them know, to focus on, to make crystal clear in the minds of your patients the value of therapeutic lifestyle changes. Now with that in mind, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And that truism provides the foundation for this presentation entitled Leveraging the Power of Patient Education for Reducing Lifestyle-Induced Metabolic Disease. Now the illustration that you see here is available as a printed handout for patient education and as a framed wall-mountable poster for your office. In a detailed yet clear and graphic way, it shows how unhealthy lifestyle can lead to chronic disease and how profound therapeutic lifestyle changes may be in helping to reduce the incidence, morbidity, and mortality of that chronic disease. There are many significant benefits of the illustration. It illustrates the critical role of diet, of important macro and micronutrients, of specialized cell signaling modulators known as SKRMs, the importance of pure food, pure environment, and healthy habits. It provides a clear and graphic picture between unhealthy and healthy, and that visual contrast is often very enlightening for people. It often creates an epiphany or a deep understanding that inspires a desire within them to change. That deeper patient understanding then creates a stronger belief in the value of lifestyle therapy, then they're more motivated and they're more compliant. So my goal is to clarify the details contained in this illustration so that you can more easily educate and inspire your patients to embrace a healthy lifestyle and truly change. So let's begin. The illustration is divided down the center, with unhealthy lifestyle and the resultant unhealthy metabolic function being depicted on the left, and healthy lifestyle and metabolic function being depicted on the right. As we take a closer look, we recognize this is the standard American diet. We see the burger, the fries, the cola, the sweets, and so on. And then we add to that unhealthy habits, such as smoking or the overuse of alcohol, and all of this leads to an unhealthy lifestyle. Now, the problem is not that people don't know that they shouldn't eat fast food or sweets and pursue other facets of an unhealthy lifestyle. It's that they don't understand how serious the consequences may be. We need to help them understand that a serious consequence of living an unhealthy lifestyle is that it can lead to lipotoxicity. Now, lipotoxicity is designed or it's defined as ectopic fat accumulation in various tissues and organs, leading to pathologic changes and impaired function. What do we mean by ectopic? This is fat that's occurring in an abnormal position or place in the body. It's displaced fat. Lipotoxicity can lead to many serious issues such as obesity, some cancers, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and one of its major symptoms, that of visceral adipose tissue, or fat conditioning or surrounding the organs, causing the belly to protrude, as we see in this picture. Lipotoxicity in the liver may lead to NASH, or non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, which then can lead to cirrhosis of the liver. Lipotoxicity in the pancreas may lead to reduced beta cell function, and those are the cells that make insulin, so that would lead to reduced insulin production, possible beta cell death, and diabetes. And then lastly, lipotoxicity in the heart and the vascular system may lead to endothelial damage, or damage to the blood vessels leading to athero- and arteriosclerosis, or even going further, leading to cardiomyopathy or even heart failure. So in summary, lipotoxicity, this ectopic fat accumulation in the muscles, in the liver, in the pancreas, in the heart, in the vascular system, and in many, many other organs and tissues, leads to pathologic changes and impaired physiologic function. What we want to do is chart the path of influence, or the physiologic effect of unhealthy diet and lifestyle on various tissues and organs. So we're going to take a close look at the small intestine, and we'll see how unhealthy lifestyle creates damage as a result of a high dietary fat content, and then as a result of that, it produces unhealthy changes in the gut bacterial ecology. This increases gut toxicity, resulting in reduced integrity of the gut lining or barrier mechanism, and then that allows for an increase in endotoxemia, or toxins in the serum. We're going to take a closer look at muscle cells as our example. Now, this physiology can be reproduced in many tissues, but we're going to look at muscle cells on a cellular level, myocytes, and see how unhealthy lifestyle and diet will increase inflammation signaling, that will increase inflammation mediators, that reduces insulin sensitivity, it reduces metabolic activity, it increases serum glucose and fat, and that leads to lipotoxicity. We are also going to look at fat cells, or adipocytes, and see how they respond to excess fat by producing more fat. They take sugar and create fat out of it through a process called lipogenesis. And when they reach or exceed their fat storage capacity, they attract immune cells, specifically monocytes and then macrophages, all leading to lipotoxicity in various tissues and organs. And then lastly, we're going to look at immune cells, monocytes and macrophages, and see how they infiltrate the fat tissue and increase fat-related inflammation, or hot fat. Now, I don't mean sexy fat. I mean inflamed fat. And that initiates a feed-forward cycle that reduces insulin sensitivity and increases lipotoxicity. So let's take a closer look at this standard American diet. What we're really talking about is a high-fat and high-refined simple sugar diet. It's high in additives and preservatives and toxins. It's low in fruits and vegetables and fiber, low in healthy oils, and low in essential fatty acids like omega-3s. It's high in empty calories, it has a high acid content, and it has little healthy color. In fact, it's almost a monochromatic diet. It's the yellow and brown diet. Now, food is information, and the information that comes from the standard American diet is unhealthy information. Now, on top of that, we add unhealthy habits, such as the implied physical inactivity that goes with an unhealthy lifestyle, excess stress, sleep deprivation, toxin exposure coming from possible alcohol overuse or cigarette smoking, or even the overuse of important therapies such as antibiotics. The end result of this is an unhealthy lifestyle. Now, the impact that this unhealthy lifestyle has on the gut is quite profound. As you can see, it's filled with toxic materials. We find it has a very, very high level of fat in it, increased chylomicrons in the gut. We have an increased level of sugar in the form of saccharides. There's an increased level of endotoxins. Now, these are lipopolysaccharides, or cell wall fragments from gram-negative bacteria, and they have very toxic effects in the body. We also see an increase in environmental toxins, such as N-nitrosamines or benzenes from cigarette smoke, or even herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides in food production. So the high-fat diet compromises the gut barrier, as you see here. It can produce leaky gut syndrome. How is it that the high-fat diet compromises the gut barrier? Well, prolonged fat absorption in the form of chylomicrons can loosen junction complexes between the enterocytes, or these cells that line the gut wall, and increase gut permeability. They target two important proteins, zonula occludens 1 and occludin. Now, increased bile acid metabolism may also loosen those junction complexes, or these proteins between the enterocytes. And those proteins, the zonula occludens 1 and occludin, are essential for holding the cells together, keeping a nice tight junction. So increased bile acid reduces that. Excess dietary fat can also negatively affect the composition of the gut bacterial population, contributing to endotoxemia, or these toxins flowing into the blood. The beneficial bacteria, Bifidobacterium species, improve gut barrier mechanism and function, but are significantly reduced in a high-fat-fed diet. Increased bile acid production is associated with unfavorable changes in gut bacteria, also contributing to gut permeability. Now, the result of this is an increase in lipopolysaccharide absorption, an increase in endotoxemia, and an increase in inflammation. LPS is a potent endotoxin, a major inducer of inflammatory changes in the body. LPS is a main component of the external wall of the gram-negative bacteria that colonize the intestines. Trillions of bacteria occupy that gastrointestinal tract, providing a huge reservoir of LPS endotoxin that could potentially be absorbed. Normally, only a very small amount of LPS is absorbed, but a high-fat diet can result in increased LPS absorption and endotoxemia. LPS can even be incorporated into chylomicrons and absorbed into the blood as part of the normal chylomicron fat absorption process, so they come into the body through that route as well. Now, gut permeability equals increase in endotoxin absorption, as we see pictured here. Those endotoxins can easily flow through the gut barrier mechanism, and they rise in the blood. Now, increased sugar and fat in circulation coming from this unhealthy diet is now accompanied by an increase in endotoxins circulating in the blood as well. And then at some point in time, that will result in increased endotoxins leaving the blood and finally reaching the tissues. Now here we see the endotoxin is positioned above what we call a toll-like receptor. The endotoxin and the toll-like receptor are about to bind together. This binding initiates a biochemical conversation where the endotoxin speaks to or conveys instructions to the cell. What is the signal that's spoken? What is the message? The endotoxin tells the genes to initiate an inflammatory response. Now, pro-inflammatory kinases, or enzymes, are the biochemical words or language that's used to convey this instruction or signal. And you see IKK here, that stands for I-kappa kinase, or PI3K, phosphatidylinositol 3 kinase, or AKT actually stands for protein kinase B. But these particular kinases are that language. Now, this is a very profound and important step. This is how the body begins the inflammatory process that can lead to insulin insensitivity and lipotoxicity. Now, in response to the increased kinase signals, the cell increases pro-inflammatory transcription signals, such as NF-kappa B, or this one is acid phosphatase isoenzyme 1. And in response to these increased pro-inflammatory transcription signals, the inflammatory message is carried out via the increased production of inflammatory signal molecules, such as tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukin 6. Now, an increase in these inflammatory signal molecules can wreak havoc in tissues and systems throughout the entire body. But in our illustration, the inflammatory signal speaks to the insulin receptor and inactivates it. So here you see the inactive insulin receptor unable to interact with insulin. Now, normally, an active insulin receptor will allow a nice strong insulin message to be transmitted down into the interior of the cell. But now, because of this inflammatory input, that insulin receptor is inactive, and the signal that's sent down to the interior of the cell, the insulin message, is dramatically reduced. Now, the language, again, that produces a reduction in that insulin message are kinases. So you have an increase in GSK3, and that stands for glycogen synthase kinase 3. You have an increase again in I-kappa kinase, and an increase in PKC, or protein kinase C. And through that language, then, the normal signal that should be sent out to the sugar transporters, those are known as GLUT4s, is reduced. That normal signal will cause those GLUT4s to transmit themselves through the cytoplasm of the cell, merge with the membrane of the cell, and leave open channels that sugar then can enter the cell through. Those open channels are critical. Yet under the influence of this reduced insulin signal, those sugar transporters are reduced as well. And once again, this is accomplished by an increase in the language, an increase in the kinases that inactivate those sugar transporters. Once again, elevated GSK3 and so on. Now, this communication, this language that's going on back and forth, produces one significant end result. and that's a reduced number of channels for sugar to enter into the cell. The sugar tries to get into the cell, but it doesn't have enough entryways. Some of it will get through and into the cell, but by far, the majority of the sugar does not get into the cell. And as a result, the mitochondria that use that sugar as a source of fuel to produce ATP and cellular energy and to keep metabolism strong and healthy and keep the body lean and healthy, that's all upset as a result of an inability to absorb sugar. Now, as sugar is unable to get into the cell, obviously the blood sugar remains elevated. Excess sugar is transformed into fat through a process called lipogenesis. And then that excess fat from the diet combines with the excess fat made from sugar, and it elevates the blood fat very, significantly. It stimulates fat cells to store fat. Now, this is a normal process. Healthy fat cells begin storing excess fat, and they remain well under maximal capacity in terms of their storage capacity as this process progresses. But as there's a lot of fat to be absorbed, as more fat is stored in these cells, these fat cells do approach maximal capacity, and that creates trouble. Now keep in mind, the disordered kinase signaling that produced insulin insensitivity in the muscle cell also produces upset kinase signaling and inflammation in the fat cells and causes them to become insulin resistant as well. So that same physiology of insulin resistance then in the fat cells accelerates fat storage in those cells as well. And as fat cells become completely filled with fat, they experience the stress of maximal capacity, and that stress can lead to even experiencing cell death or apoptosis, as you see depicted here. Now, as the physical stress of going beyond the capacity of the cell, as it's stretching and so on, it releases a protein called monocyte chemotactic protein 1. And that release by the fat cells basically recruits immune cells into the fat, specifically monocytes. So here we see the monocytes traveling to the fat. Then monocytes differentiate into macrophages. And macrophages make the process worse. Macrophages release more tumor necrosis factor alpha. That increases inflammation. Then with increased inflammation, we get increased insulin insensitivity. With increased insulin insensitivity, we get increased serum sugar. And with the sugar going higher and higher, we get increased lipogenesis and fat generation. Then we have increased fat into the circulation that begin to overpower the fat cells and their ability to hold the fat. And the process just goes forward in a vicious cycle. So with fat cells unable to hold any more fat, but so much more fat available, the fat moves into the lean tissue and organs. It moves from the blood into an area where it should not be. This is ectopic fat accumulation, and it results in lipotoxicity. And that's what we see pictured here. We see this fat has infiltrated the muscle and is now toxifying the muscle with this excess fat, and that's what produces the lipotoxicity we talked about earlier, and the sequelae of serious health consequences. Let's take a minute now as we go back here and look at what happens when we implement a healthy lifestyle. What is the value of a healthy lifestyle in trying to slow down this process of lipotoxicity? Well, a healthy diet, as you see pictured here, is rich in so many healthy foods, and then obviously when combined with healthy habits, it produces a healthy lifestyle. And that healthy lifestyle then produces real benefit in the body. Rather than creating the visceral adipose tissue that we saw before, we see a nice, lean, healthy abdomen. And when you compare the two, there's a dramatic difference. The visual contrast is very profound. Look at this beautiful, lean and healthy liver and pancreas, functional and effective in the work that they do, contrasted to those organs when they're suffering with lipotoxicity. And then once again, look at this lean and healthy cardiovascular system contrasted to the cardiovascular system that is burdened with ectopic fat or lipotoxicity. So we see the dramatic difference and change that can come from implementing a healthy lifestyle. So once again, we want to chart the path of influence or the physiologic effect of a healthy diet and lifestyle on various tissues and organs. So as we take a look at that healthy diet, we're really talking about a diet that's low in fat and refined simple sugar. We're talking about a diet that has a high fruit and vegetable content. It provides lean, healthy protein, healthy oils and essential fats, and is beautifully colorful. That color tells us that the food is filled with healthy information. Why do we say that? Here's some examples. Here are red phytonutrients that come from a healthy diet, things like lycopene, anthocyanins, astaxanthin, with many benefits and found in many diverse foods, both vegetables and fruits. Here are orange phytonutrients, beta-carotene, bioflavonoids, many benefits from them as well, and again found in a diverse number of vegetables and fruits. Then you have the yellow-green phytonutrients, lutein, zeaxanthin, indoles, chlorophyll, and again they're found in a variety of different fruits and vegetables. Then you also have the blue-purple phytonutrients, anthocyanins, phenolics, and the benefits that they bring in again from various fruits and vegetables. Even white, brown, or black phytonutrients can be valuable, like allicin from garlic and other plants that bring real benefit. So this healthy diet is rich. It's micronutrient dense because of the healthy foods it provides, and it's phytonutrient rich and dense. It's information rich. And again, the information that comes from this healthy diet, it's healthy information. It brings benefit to the diet. So what impact can this have when we add healthy habits? Things like remaining physically active, controlling our stress, making sure people get adequate rest and relaxation. Strive to live in a pure environment. Make sure that alcohol is not overused, or smoking, or antibiotic overuse, any of these examples. The end result of this kind of an effort is the production of a healthy lifestyle. And what does that then create for us? Well, look at this intestinal tract. If we take a closer look, we see that it's dramatically different. We have very reduced levels of fat as chylomicrons in this gut. We have reduced sugar levels. We have reduced toxins. We have so many things that, we are controlling in this way. And as a result of that, a healthy diet supports a strong gut barrier mechanism. We see normal absorption of nutrients with this healthy gut, not leaky gut, and not a leaking of a lot of toxins into the system. Now here's an interesting clinical pearl. SKRMs may provide additional support in creating that strong gut barrier mechanism. What do we mean by SKRMs? What are SKRMs? SKRMs are selective kinase response modulators, SKRMs. They're botanical-based or plant-based components that selectively modulate kinase enzymes involved in cell signaling and so many physiologic processes. 3 examples would be Rho-isoalpha acids, or RIAA, RIA, or tetrahydroisoalpha acids, or THIAA, THIA, both from hops, and then proanthocyanidins-rich extract, or PAC, from acacia. Now, these are not broad-acting or non-selective, affecting too many kinases and pathways, causing undesirable physiologic responses and side effects. These have been shown in cell-free kinase assays to be uniquely selective, modulating kinase enzymes associated with inflammation and insulin signaling. Taken from plant sources with a long history of safe dietary use gives us confidence that we can take them safely, and we know they're bioavailable upon oral absorption. Now here is a little elaboration on why they're not broad-acting or non-selective and how we know that, how we know they're not affecting too many kinases. If you look at this particular chart, we have kinase activity being depicted on the left, and we have SKRMs on the bottom of the chart. When you look at this first circle, the blue circle, most of the kinases are unaffected. Their activity is unaffected. But when you look at the orange circle, the kinases that are affected are those kinases that are specific to inflammation and insulin insensitivity. Here's an example. Again, kinase activity and SKRMs on the bottom, the RIA, beneficially reducing kinases like PI3K or GSK3 or PKC, helping to reduce inflammation and insulin signaling. Now here's a very interesting article, very helpful article to help us understand why SKRMs might be helpful in protecting the gut barrier mechanism. This is entitled Tetraisoalpha Acids and Hops Improve Glucose Homeostasis, Reduce Body Weight Gain, and here's the important point, and reduce metabolic endotoxemia in high-fat diet-fed mice. Here's what was found. When giving mice a high-fat diet and then adding thea, it was known as META-060, to a high-fat diet, it increased occludin and zonula occludens 1 tight junction proteins messenger RNA expression and improved occludin protein distribution. So it improved these proteins that are responsible for holding the enterocytes, the cells lining the intestinal tract together. And when you look at the chart, here's the occludin response. With a control diet, there wasn't much response. With a high-fat diet, there wasn't much response. But then when adding the META-060 SKRM, it basically improved the activity of these 2 tight junction proteins significantly. Here's another example of the jejunum zonula occludens 1 activity. Again, control diet, not much activity. High-fat diet, not much activity. But then you add the SKRMs or the thea to that high-fat diet, and we see it improves the zonula occludens 1 tight junction protein messenger RNA expression. So these proteins are improved. Now what that means for us clinically is we could have a possible support for tightening up the junction between those enterocytes, or those cells that line the intestinal wall or the gut barrier, hopefully reducing leaky gut syndrome. So SKRMs may provide this additional support. Very interesting. And so this kind of healthy lifestyle and SKRM support supports healthy digestion and healthy absorption, not leaky gut syndrome. Now, as healthy levels of sugar and fat are found in circulation, they are then now, in their healthy state, they're accompanied by healthy levels of endotoxins, reduced levels reaching the tissues, as you see pictured here. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, here we see if reduced levels of endotoxins are present to bind with the toll-like receptor, we're going to have a reduced amount of cell signaling to the genes, right? Not as much cell signaling, and that would result in less inflammatory messaging going to those genes. SKRMs can further support the reduction in the pro-inflammatory kinase signals. So in other words, we've got a reduction of endotoxins creating less pro-inflammatory kinase signals, but now we can add SKRMs as another tool that could help in that regard. And that further reduces the signal that's being sent to the genes, further reduces the inflammatory response. So what we do with SKRMs is we modulate, again, IKK or PI3K or AKT, down-regulate them so that the message that they're sending is significantly weaker. And that's possible, as we can see from this particular reminder, because the research shows RIA, as a SKRM, reduces the activity of PI3K. And so we know that the proanthocyanidins extract also reduces the activity of kinases like PI3K or IKK. So adding these to a person's program can help them to reduce their expression that way. So with reduced communication of inflammatory signaling to the genes, you're going to have reduced pro-inflammatory transcription signals, reduced levels of NF-kappa B and AP1. And as a result, the message that's sent to the insulin receptor is significantly reduced. You'll have reduced inflammatory signaling molecules, so less tumor necrosis factor alpha and less interleukin-6. And as a result, the insulin receptor is able to bind with insulin, and that produces a nice increased insulin message reaching the rest of the cell. Now, once again, as a therapeutic kind of clinical pearl, SKRMs may also further reduce the kinases and further increase insulin messaging, because this is the language that we're talking about. So by applying SKRMs, we can modulate GSK3 or IKK or PKC, and that will further enhance the insulin message reaching the rest of the cell. And so we know from looking at the research, that's what it shows. The RIA is shown to reduce GSK3, reduce the activity of PKCB, and then again the proanthocyanidin extract reduces the IKK as well. So we can modulate those. Now that allows for a nice response to the sugar transporters, the GLUT4s. They get the message that they need. They're able to flow through the cytoplasm of the cell, bump up against the inner membrane of the cell, fuse with it, flatten out, and embed these open doorways for sugar to enter into the cell. And so, once again, SKRMs applied in this particular place can reduce the kinases that would inhibit that, And that further enables the sugar transporters with a nice, strong signal. They're able to do what they're supposed to do in that regard. Now, additional supplemental support can be very, very helpful, very profound. So we're talking about specific micronutrients, macronutrients, essential fatty acids, phytonutrients, plant-based phytochemicals. All of these help facilitate healthy metabolic function. They act as substrate for healthy body structure, as coenzymes required for enzyme activation, as molecules essential for cell signaling, and so much more. So additional supplemental support can bring real benefit in this scenario. Macronutrients might include a soy-based protein isolate that's not genetically engineered or modified, its identity preserved. We might add high amylose fiber as another powerful macronutrient to bring benefit. Healthy fats, monounsaturated fatty acids, some polyunsaturated fatty acids. These could be components of a medical food that could support patients in the right direction. Then micronutrients can be added, things like alpha-lipoic acid, chromium, magnesium, zinc, selenium, thiamine, and so many other nutrients can be helpful in improving this cell signaling and restoring insulin sensitivity. Also helpful would be essential fatty acids like EPA and DHA. Amino acids like taurine, L-carnosine is a dipeptide composed of beta-alanine and histidine. And then phytonutrients and plant-based phytochemicals can also be very, very helpful. Things like cinnamon, or catechins, or epigallocatechin gallate, chlorogenic acid, barley beta-glucans, fenugreek seed, bitter gourd, and so on, so many other things. So these nutrients, now in combination with what we would call SKRM signaling therapy, providing these SKRMs, provides a much more complete nutritional support approach than just using nutrients by themselves. We feel that it's much more complete. So again, thinking about modifying this inflammation signaling, calming it down, controlling it, and then enhancing insulin receptor signaling, the end result of that particular effort is this. We have more open channels for sugar to enter into the cell. And that's exactly what happens. You get better sugar delivery down to the interior of the cell. So as a result of that, the mitochondria are receiving the fuel that they need. You can see in the illustration they're richly being supplied with specific glucose molecules so that they can generate the ATP that's necessary to maintain excellent metabolic activity, burn calories, keep the person lean, keep them healthy. So it's a real profound benefit. Now, as we take a look here, this healthy level of blood sugar is maintained through the healthy lifestyle. This prevents lipogenesis, so we're preventing the transformation of sugar to fat. A healthy diet ensures then a healthy level of blood fat as well, coming from the diet and non-conversion of sugar to fat, leading to healthy fat storage and management by healthy fat cells. Those cells begin storing fat but are well under maximal capacity. And as the process continues, moves forward, you have the same scenario. Healthy fat cells continue storing fat, but still well within healthy capacity. Now, it's important to remember insulin-sensitive fat cells can effectively manage healthy fat storage. So just like we're able to support healthy insulin sensitivity in the muscle cell, now we're also able to support healthy insulin sensitivity in the fat cells and improve their function and their fat storage. They avoid the stress associated with overstorage of fat, and they sustain a healthy capacity, not producing the stress that would be associated by going beyond that capacity. Monocytes remain calm with no MCP1 to attract them, and then that prevents macrophage infiltration and breaking the vicious feed-forward cycle induced by inflammatory signaling. So the end result, the profound end result of this physiology is that excess fat is eliminated from circulation. It's managed properly, and as a result of that, we don't see lipotoxicity. Lipotoxicity is eliminated. And as a result of that, as we said earlier, you have healthy function, healthy tissues, and a vibrant level of health that people can really enjoy. Now, we've been talking about laboratory studies that show the principles and the premise for this, but what happens clinically when this is applied? Well, some research has been done along those lines. This particular article in Nutrition and Metabolism was published to show the value of therapeutic lifestyle changes and then the addition of SKRMs in reducing metabolic syndrome. This was a 12-week, 2-arm randomized clinical study in 49 participants with metabolic syndrome. It was conducted at the Functional Medicine Research Center in Gig Harbor, Washington. The first arm was a Mediterranean-style low glycemic load food plan with moderate exercise. Arm 2 was the same food plan with moderate exercise supplemented with a soy-based medical food plus SKRMs. Rhea and acacia was added. What was the result? Well, the lifestyle therapy did produce a significant benefit. We see nice movement of these biomarkers in the right direction, helping to improve the incidence here of metabolic syndrome. But when the lifestyle therapy with SKRMs was added, we find a significant increase in the beneficial movement of those biomarkers. Many times these numbers were twice as good as the previous group. So in terms of net resolution of metabolic syndrome, lifestyle therapy was effective. It reduced metabolic syndrome by 32%. But by adding SKRMs, we could reduce metabolic syndrome by 44%, as shown in this study. Now, in a very similar follow-up study, the same principles were analyzed. It was a 12-week trial, a 2-arm randomized clinical study in 89 patients, this time with metabolic syndrome. This was done at the University of Connecticut at Storrs, the University of Florida at Jacksonville, the University of California at Irvine, to see if those original benefits could be duplicated in this second trial. Again, in Arm 1, there was a Mediterranean-style low glycemic load food plan, and in Arm 2, the same food plan with the addition of a soy-based medical food plus SKRMs, the rhea and again the acacia. What was the end result? Again, excellent improvement in the biomarkers we're looking at to reduce metabolic syndrome. But again, as in the first trial, when lifestyle therapy was combined with select kinase response modulators or SKRMs, we see a significant improvement in the biomarkers that we're looking to change. Again, going back to looking at net resolution of metabolic syndrome, lifestyle therapy reduced metabolic syndrome by itself by 22%. Lifestyle therapy with SKRMs reduced metabolic syndrome by 43%. So a significant improvement by adding the medical food and the SKRMs. So I hope this information has helped you to find ways in your thinking where you could address this whole process of the value of lifestyle changes with your patients. We think it's an incredibly valuable conversation to have with people to inspire them, to move them, to motivate them to want to embrace and adopt these healthy lifestyle changes. So we hope that you will leverage the power of this patient education for reducing lifestyle-induced metabolic disease. Thanks for your attention.